Before you listen, if you enjoy the stories and want to hear more, then please consider subscribing. Most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please take this time to subscribe. Turn on notifications so you'll never miss a story and be the first to hear. You'll also be supporting me. Thank you. I'll admit I hadn't logged into Facebook in years. It just felt so outdated, All my friends had long since moved on to greener social media pastures. Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, you name it. But the other day, as I was mindlessly scrolling through my phone, a sudden wave of nostalgia washed over me. I found myself missing that sense of connection with the old gang, the casual chit-chat and photo sharing that used to fill my feed. So on a whim, I decided to reactivate my long-dormant Facebook account and see what everyone was up to. At first, it was actually kind of nice. I spent a good chunk of the afternoon scrolling through my feed, liking old photos and commenting on statuses. It was like no time had passed at all. The same inside jokes, the same oversharing of mundane life events, the same mix of heartwarming and cringe-inducing content. I even reached out to a few people I used to be close with, sending them messages and setting up plans to grab coffee and catch up in person. But then, as the days went on, I started to notice something off. Whenever I posted something, whether it was an update about my day or just a silly meme, it would quickly rack up a bunch of likes and comments. That part wasn't too unusual. I'd always been a fairly active social media user, and my posts tended to get a decent amount of engagement. But the nature of the interaction started to concern me. A lot of the comments and reactions were coming from accounts I didn't recognize at all, just random people I'd never interacted with before, with no mutual friends or interests in common. And the things they were saying were, well, they were just strange, to put it mildly. Vague, ominous statements that sent a chill down my spine. Nice pic. You look great out there. I see I'm watching. Can't wait to see what you post next, beautiful. I tried not to read too much into it at first, convincing myself that I was just being paranoid. Maybe these were just overeager fans or bots leaving automated comments. But then I started noticing these same mysterious accounts popping up on other people's pages too, always saying equally unsettling things. That's when the private messages started rolling in. At first, it was just benign stuff. Love the new haircut. Or your vacation photos are making me jealous. But gradually, the messages grew weirder and more disturbing. I see you out there, I'm always watching. You can't hide from me forever, sweetheart. I'm coming for you. Just you wait. I felt a chill run down my spine every time I read one of those messages. Who the hell were these people, and why were they targeting me? I racked my brain, trying to think of anyone who might have a grudge against me or want to mess with me in this twisted way, but I came up empty. As far as I knew, I didn't have any enemies, at least not the kind that would go to such creepy lengths to harass me. I tried blocking the accounts, but new ones just kept popping up, seeming to appear out of nowhere. It was like playing a twisted game of whack-a-mole. No matter how many I shut down, more would spring up in their place, always with the same disturbing messages and unnerving profile photos. Eventually, I deactivated my Facebook account altogether, hoping that would put an end to the harassment. But the damage was already done. Even without the app on my phone, I found myself constantly checking for new notifications, my heart pounding every time I saw a message or a friend request from an unfamiliar name. The whole situation had me on edge, constantly looking over my shoulder. I started double-checking my locks at night and avoiding going out alone. I was terrified that whoever was behind those creepy messages would somehow track me down in the real world, that they'd been watching me all along, just waiting for the chance to strike. Honestly, I considered deleting all my social media accounts, cutting off my digital ties completely, but that I worried that might just make me an even bigger target, like I was hiding from these people. And the thought of them finding me in the physical world, away from the relative safety of my screens, was enough to send me into a full-blown panic attack. So for now, I'm stuck in this limbo, constantly on edge and terrified of what might happen next. I jump at every strange sound, every unexpected knock at the door. I find myself constantly checking over my shoulder, searching the shadows for any sign of movement. I know it's probably just my imagination running wild, but I can't help it. Those messages, and the sense of being watched and followed, have left an indelible mark on my psyche. I feel violated, exposed, like these people have invaded every aspect of my life, even the ones that exist solely online. I'll never be able to use Facebook again. That much is certain. The risk is just too great, not when there are crazies out there stalking me and leaving those unsettling messages. From now on, I'm sticking to more secure platforms, where I can control who sees my content and who has access to me. Maybe I'll even consider deleting all my social media accounts altogether, cutting myself off from the digital world entirely. At least that way, I won't have to worry about these creeps finding me. And if I ever do decide to give Facebook another shot, you can bet I'll be extra vigilant, constantly on the lookout for any suspicious activity. I'll scrutinize every friend request, every comment, every message, searching for any red flags. Because the thought of those people still being out there, watching and waiting, fills me with a dread I can't even begin to describe. It's a fear that haunts my every waking moment, a shadow that follows me wherever I go. Sometimes I find myself wondering if I'm overreacting, if I'm just letting my paranoia get the better of me. After all, it's not like these people have actually done anything to physically harm me, yet maybe it's all just a sick joke or some kind of twisted prank. But then I remember the sheer malice behind those messages, the sense of being hunted, and I know deep down that this is something far more sinister. I should have seen it coming, really. We all know how crazy and volatile the digital landscape can be these days. The endless barrage of scams, hacks, and online harassment that seems to just keep getting worse. But I guess I just never thought it would happen to me. I'd always prided myself on being fairly tech-savvy, someone who was proactive about online security and privacy. My social media profiles were locked down tight, with strong passwords, two-factor authentication, the whole 9 yards. I wasn't one of those people who overshared every tiny detail of their life, either. My Facebook was mostly just for staying in touch with close family and friends, nothing too personal or revealing. But then one day, as I was mindlessly scrolling through my feed, I started noticing some strange activity on my account. Posts I didn't remember making, weird comments popping up on my friends' pages. At first, I just brushed it off, figured maybe I'd had a lapse in judgment or had a few too many drinks one night and did some drunken posting. Lord knows I'd done that before, and it had led to its fair share of embarrassment and regret. But then the messages started rolling in. Frantic texts and DMs from people I knew, asking what the hell was going on with my Facebook. Apparently, I'd been posting all kinds of inappropriate, embarrassing stuff, risque photos, angry rants, even some concerning content about self-harm. I immediately jumped onto my account to see for myself, and that's when the panic set in. Everything those people had said was true. There were posts I had absolutely no recollection of making, things that were completely out of character for me. And the comments. The comments. My friends and family were freaking out, accusing me of being hacked or having some kind of mental breakdown. I tried to explain, to reassure them that this wasn't me, that someone had clearly gained access to my account. But the more I tried to fix it, the worse it got. Every time I deleted a post or blocked a commenter, 2 more would pop up in their place, taunting me, daring me to try and stop them. It was a losing battle, and I knew it. Whoever had hacked me was relentless, hell-bent on making my life a living hell. And the more I struggled, the more damage they did. Soon, the fallout started spilling over into my real life. People at work were giving me weird looks, whispering behind my back. I even got called into my boss's office, who proceeded to grill me about the concerning posts they'd seen on my page. Apparently, some of my coworkers had brought them to HR's attention, worried that I was a liability or a threat to the company. I tried to explain, to plead my case, but they weren't having it. All they saw were the posts, the inappropriate content, the hints of mental instability. And just like that, I was suspended pending a wellness evaluation. My professional reputation, something I'd worked hard to build over the years, was in tatters. Things only got worse from there. Family members started reaching out, concerned and confused. My own mother even unfriended me on Facebook, convinced I completely lost my mind. Friends started distancing themselves, afraid of getting caught up in the drama. I was drowning in this nightmare of my own digital making, and I had no idea how to fix it. I reported the hacking to Facebook, but their support team was about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. They promised to look into it, but in the meantime, the posts and comments just kept piling up. I even considered going to the police, but what could they really do? It's not like they have a special cyber crimes unit that can just magically track down some random hacker and make them stop. I was on my own, at the mercy of this unknown, faceless person who had decided to make my life a living hell. Eventually, in a last-ditch effort to regain control, I deactivated my Facebook account altogether. But the damage was already done. The posts were still out there, the comments still visible to anyone who came across them. And the rumors, the whispers, those would linger forever, tainting my reputation both online and off. These days, I find myself constantly looking over my shoulder, jumping at every unexpected notification on my phone. I'm terrified to even think about reactivating my Facebook, let alone trying to rebuild my shattered online presence. The thought of that hacker coming after me again, of them unleashing even more chaos and destruction, is enough to send me into a full-blown panic attack. I know I can't live like this forever, constantly living in fear, but right now it's all I can do to keep it together, to not completely unravel under the weight of this nightmare. I've considered deleting all my social media accounts, cutting myself off from the digital world entirely. At least that way, I won't have to worry about those creeps finding me and wreaking more havoc. But even that feels like running away, like admitting defeat. Part of me wants to fight back, to try and track down the person responsible and make them pay. But I have no idea where to even start. I'm just a regular person, not some kind of cyber sleuth. And the thought of going up against a skilled hacker, someone who was able to so easily infiltrate my supposedly secure accounts, is enough to make my blood run cold. So for now, I'm stuck in this uneasy limbo, constantly on the defensive and living in fear of what might happen next. I jump at every notification, every strange car that passes by my house. I find myself constantly checking the shadows, searching for any sign that I'm being watched. It's exhausting, both physically and mentally, but I can't bring myself to let my guard down, not even for a second. It was just another ordinary day when I received a friend request from an unknown person on Facebook. The profile picture was blurry and the name was unfamiliar, but I didn't think much of it. I assumed it was just a random person trying to expand their friend list. Without giving it a second thought, I accepted the request and carried on with my day, blissfully unaware of the nightmare that was about to unfold. At first, the messages from this unknown account seemed harmless enough. They started with a casual, "Hey, what's up?" but quickly took a strange turn. The person began mentioning details about my life that I had never shared online. They knew about my favorite coffee shop, the one I visited every morning before work. They knew the route I took to get there, the street names and landmarks I passed along the way. They even knew the color of my living room walls, a detail I had never posted about on any social media platform. I tried to convince myself that maybe they were just a mutual friend who had heard things about me through the grapevine, but deep down I knew something wasn't right. As the days turned into weeks, the messages became increasingly unsettling. The unknown account would comment on my outfit, as if they had seen me that very morning. They would mention the exact time I left for work, the people I interacted with throughout the day. They would ask about private conversations I had with my close friends, conversations that took place in person or over the phone, not on any online platform. It was as if they had been eavesdropping on every aspect of my life, watching my every move like some invisible, malevolent presence. A sense of unease crept over me, a feeling that I couldn't shake no matter how hard I tried. I became paranoid, constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering I was being followed. I started to question everything and everyone around me, wondering who I could trust. I even began to doubt my own sanity, wondering if I was losing my mind. I attempted to block the account, hoping to put an end to the disturbing messages, but it was futile. They would simply create a new account and start the harassment all over again, each time with a different name and profile picture. I even went as far as changing my privacy settings, making sure that only my closest friends and family could see my posts and personal information. But somehow, they always managed to find a way to reach me, to infiltrate my digital life no matter how many barriers I put up. I considered going to the police, but I knew that without any tangible evidence, there was little they could do to help. The messages, while disturbing, were not overly threatening, and I had no way of proving that they were coming from the same person. I felt trapped, helpless, like I was at the mercy of some faceless entity that held all the power. The constant paranoia began to take a toll on my mental health. I found myself constantly on edge, jumping at the slightest sound, seeing shadows and threats in every corner. I became a recluse, too afraid to leave the safety of my own home. I stopped going to my favorite coffee shop, stopped taking my usual route to work. I canceled plans with friends and family, too scared to venture outside, too scared to face the world that suddenly felt so hostile and threatening. I felt like a prisoner in my own life, trapped by the fear of my unknown stalker. As time passed, the messages took on a more sinister tone. The unknown account started making demands, hinting at the terrible consequences that would follow if I didn't comply. They wanted money, they wanted me to engage in illegal activities, they wanted me to betray the people I loved most. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality, like I was being sucked into a twisted game with no escape, no way out. Desperate for a way to end the nightmare, I tried to reason with my tormentor. I sent messages back, begging them to leave me alone, to stop the relentless harassment. I poured my heart out, trying to appeal to whatever shred of humanity they might possess. But my pleas only seemed to fuel their sadistic desires. They thrived at my fear, growing bolder and more vicious with each interaction. They taunted me, mocked me, reveled in my despair. I realized that engaging with them was only making matters worse, that I was playing right into their hands. With no other options left, I made the heart-wrenching decision to leave my old life behind. I emptied my bank account, packed a few essentials, and disappeared without a trace. I changed my name, my appearance, and every aspect of my identity. I cut ties with everyone I knew, even my closest friends and family. I severed all connections to my past, knowing that I could never go back to the life I once knew. I started over in a new place, far away from the nightmare that had consumed me, far away from the digital trail that my stalker had so ruthlessly exploited. It was supposed to be just another fun night with my friends, a chance to let loose and have some laughs. We had this tradition of pulling pranks on each other, always trying to one-up the last one. It was a way for us to bond, to show our affection for each other in our own twisted way. This time, it was my turn to be the target, and I was ready for whatever they had in store. Or so I thought. We decided to do a Facebook live stream just for kicks. It was something we had done before, filming our antics and sharing them with our friends online. I figured they'd do something silly like pie me in the face or maybe try to scare me with a fake spider. I was laughing and joking around as I hit the Go Live button, totally oblivious to what was about to go down. At first, everything seemed normal. My friends were all gathered around, making goofy faces at the camera and cracking jokes. We had a few drinks in us, and the mood was light and festive. But then, out of nowhere, things took a dark turn. One of my buddies, Jake, pulled out a gun. I thought it was just a toy at first, part of the prank, but the look in his eyes told me otherwise. He started waving the gun around, pointing it at the camera and then at me. I could see the comments starting to flood in from people watching the live stream, asking if this was real or just a joke. My heart was racing as I tried to play it cool, thinking maybe Jake was just taking the prank to the next level. But then he started making threats, saying he was going to hurt me or hurt all of us. I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins as I realized this wasn't a prank anymore. This was real, and it was happening live on Facebook for the whole world to see. I tried to reason with Jake to calm him down, but he was too far gone. He started ranting about how we had always excluded him, how we had made him feel like an outsider in our little group. I watched in horror as he turned the gun on himself, still streaming live. Time seemed to slow down as I lunged for him, desperately trying to grab the gun to stop him from doing something we would all regret. But it was too late. The sound of the gunshot echoed through the room, and Jake crumpled to the ground, blood pooling around him. Chaos erupted as people started screaming and crying. I could hear the sound of sirens in the distance growing louder as they approached. Someone finally had the sense to end the live stream, but the damage was already done. The video went viral, spreading like wildfire across social media. People were shocked, horrified, and morbidly fascinated by what they had witnessed. The police showed up not long after, trying to piece together what had happened. We were all questioned extensively, but none of us had any idea that Jake was struggling like that. We thought we knew him, but clearly we didn't know him at all. It was like he had been living a double life, hiding his pain and hurt behind a mask of jokes and laughter. The fallout from that night was devastating. Jake's family was shattered, and the rest of us were left trying to pick up the pieces of our lives. We were harassed online with people leaving vicious comments and even death threats. They called us monsters, blamed us for Jake's death. Some sick individuals even turned screenshots from the live stream into memes, making light of the tragedy. I couldn't shake the guilt, the feeling that I should have seen the signs, should have done something to help Jake before it got to that point. I started withdrawing from social media, from my friends, from everything. I couldn't bear to see the comments, the accusations, the constant reminders of that horrible night. I started having panic attacks, waking up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, my heart pounding out of my chest. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't function. I felt like I was losing my mind, like I was drowning in a sea of despair and guilt. I finally reached out for help, started seeing a therapist. It was a long and painful process, but slowly I started to heal. I learned to forgive myself, to accept that I couldn't have known what was going to happen, that I wasn't responsible for Jake's actions. But the scars from that night will never fully heal. The memory of Jake's face, the sound of the gunshot, the feeling of helplessness as I watch him take his own life, those things will stay with me forever. It's a burden I'll carry with me for the rest of my days. The worst part is knowing that the video is still out there, that people are still watching it, still sharing it. It's like a digital scar that will never fully heal, a reminder of the worst night of my life. I wonder sometimes how many people have seen it, how many lives have been affected by it. I really should have learned my lesson after the last disastrous online dating experience, but the loneliness eventually wore me down. Just mindlessly swiping through profiles became a boring routine to fill those empty evenings after work. That's how I stumbled across Tom's profile on Facebook dating. Decent-looking guy seemed normal enough from his bio, so I swiped to match and opened the door for chatting. Red flags popped up instantly. Tom came on way too strong, trying to rapidly accelerate from casual intro to overly personal at an uncomfortable pace. Just a few messages in, he started demanding intrusive details like real names, employers, home addresses, way too much for chatting with a total stranger. I tried deflecting, but he just doubled down. That's when the switch flipped and Mr. Friendly Act dropped entirely, revealing the unhinged psycho raging underneath. Suddenly my inbox was bombarded by a rapid-fire torrent of vitriol, page after page of messages calling me every vile name and insult imaginable. His language was shockingly vulgar and degrading, more akin to the ramblings of a deeply disturbed individual than someone who just moments ago had been trying to chat me up. In Tom's clearly twisted reality, my hesitation to instantly dox myself by oversharing a trove of personal information and details to a total stranger online was ironclad proof that I was running some sort of deranged catfishing scheme. That I was a despicable liar and fraud, just stringing him along as part of an elaborate scam instead of genuinely looking to meet someone. No matter how much I frantically tried to diffuse the situation with reason, logic, and earnest apologies for any miscommunication, it was like I was dousing his raging bonfire with buckets of gasoline. The more I pleaded and explained that I simply value privacy and personal safety in the early stages of online dating, the more unhinged he became. Within moments, his threats metastasized from vows to make me pay for wasting his precious time to something far more severe, hunt me down in person, and teach me a lesson I would never forget. Suddenly, I could viscerally picture this stranger somehow discovering where I lived or worked and showing up to violently confront me over these imagined wrongs. One tiny part of my brain recognized that the wise move was to immediately seize all engagement, lock this raving lunatic's number on all channels, and report his threatening messages to the proper authorities. But that impulse was completely overpowered by sheer shock paralysis at the breakneck speed his mental state had deteriorated into outright mania. I was consumed by legitimate fear that if I took any action to provoke or crossed him further in that fragile state, even unintentionally, he would absolutely make good on his deranged promises of retaliation. Pathetically, my caveman brain switched to pure appeasement mode out of that terrifying thought he could somehow track me down. So against all logic, I stupidly caved and sent him pictures, desperate to defuse the hostility grenade I'd clearly just lit. Fat chance of that working with someone so unhinged. The deranged rants immediately pivoted to calling those initial pics obvious fakes, COVID-fueled demands for even more explicit pictures. That's when the pit in my stomach grew into a chasm. There'd be no appeasing or de-escalating someone operating on that irrational, paranoid wavelength. He was too far gone, clinging to his twisted catfishing delusion. This would only get darker. Somehow, someway, I finally managed to break free from the paralytic trance of fear that had seized control of my mind and body as Tom's messages devolved deeper and deeper into unhinged hostility. With hands trembling from the sheer adrenaline coursing through my veins, I began rapidly hitting the block button on every possible channel I could think of, cutting him off from the dating app, Facebook, Instagram, anything that could allow this psycho to continue funneling his rage directly into my life. But that didn't feel like enough. What was to stop him from simply creating new anonymous accounts to perpetuate the harassment and threats? So with a heart jackhammering in my chest, I fired off an urgent report and plea to Facebook's security and safety team, meticulously documenting the entire horrific interaction and attaching the vile, threatening messages as evidence. I begged them to take any possible action to prevent this disturbed individual from just circumventing the blocks and opening new abusive accounts to continue tormenting me from the dark crevices of the internet. Hitting that send button to report this clearly unstable person should have brought a sense of relief, knowing I'd done everything in my power to de-escalate the situation. But if anything, an eerie calm before the storm seemed to blanket my mind. I couldn't shake this persistent gut feeling that any second I would hear an angry, thunderous pounding at my front door. As if by simply blocking and reporting him, I'd sent this raving psycho's tenuous grasp on reality into a nuclear-level meltdown that would spur him to somehow instantaneously pinpoint my exact location for the ultimate act of deranged retaliation over these imagined offenses. In the end, the threats and verbal assaults mercifully stopped arriving on my devices once I successfully blocked every avenue he could use to continue the harassment campaign. But any sense of true relief or feeling of security were elusively short-lived. Even as the days and weeks passed in blissful silence from that harrowing episode, I couldn't shake the persistent, haunting thoughts gnawing away at the back of my mind. What if he was simply lying in wait, stewing in his own unhinged anger like a doomsday cult prepper stockpiling weapons and plotting out his grand vindictive return? Would he eventually escalate to finding my actual personal information through more nefarious means, obsessively working himself into a frenzy before emerging to finally unmask me as the lying, deceptive catfish he'd already decided I was in his twisted delusions?
Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.